I've always been a dreamer. From a young age, I would strum my guitar and sing with such passion that it felt like the world was mine for the taking. But after moving to Nashville, the capital of country music, I quickly realized that the path to success was fraught with more obstacles than I had ever imagined. Every night I would perform at local bars, hoping to catch a break. The smoky air and dim lights became a familiar backdrop as I poured my heart into every song. My fingers danced across the strings, and my voice carried my dreams to the small audiences that gathered. But for every night of hopeful anticipation, there seemed to be a rejection waiting for me the next day. One particularly disheartening day, I found myself in the office of Steve Harper, a well-known music producer. I had mustered all my courage and handed him my demo, a collection of songs that I believed in with all my heart. He listened, nodding occasionally, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. When the last note played, he looked up at me with a bemused expression. "David," he said, leaning back in his chair, "there's nothing special here. It's just average." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to protest, to explain how much these songs meant to me. But all I managed was a weak nod before shuffling out of his office. It wasn't the first rejection, and it wouldn't be the last. Another time, I found myself in front of Linda Brooks, a local critic known for her harsh reviews. I had hoped that maybe, just maybe, she would see something in my music that others had missed. But as I finished my performance, her expression remained unimpressed. "David, it's not that you're bad," she said, her tone almost condescending. "But you're not memorable. Nashville is full of talent. You need to stand out, and I just don't see it." Those words echoed in my mind as I walked home that night. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of talent, with no lifeline in sight. Despite all the setbacks, Emily and Jake were my constants. Emily, my girlfriend, would always be there with a reassuring smile and a comforting hug. Jake, my best friend, would slap me on the back and tell me to keep going. "Man, you've got the talent," Jake said one night, as we sat in my apartment, nursing beers. "These people just don't see it yet, but they will. You've got to keep pushing." Emily nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "David, you can't give up now. We believe in you. And soon, everyone else will too." Their unwavering support was the only thing that kept me going. But even their encouragement couldn't completely shield me from the creeping doubt that began to settle in my mind. One evening, after yet another disheartening rejection from a major studio, I found myself at an all-time low. My dreams felt like they were slipping through my fingers, and I was beginning to question if I was really cut out for this. I sat on the edge of the stage after my performance at a local bar, staring at the empty chairs. Jake walked up, camera in hand, and sat next to me. "David, I know it's tough," he said, his voice serious, "but you've got something. I can feel it. And I'm not the only one." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I don't know, Jake. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just not good enough." Jake shook his head firmly. "No way, man. You've got to keep fighting. We're with you no matter what." Emily joined us, wrapping her arms around me from behind. "David, you can't give up. We believe in you, and we're not going anywhere." Their words were a balm to my wounded spirit. I took a deep breath, nodding slowly. "All right," I said, determination creeping back into my voice. "I'll keep going, for you guys, and for me." Little did I know, that night would be a turning point. Though the rejections had almost broken me, the unwavering support of Emily and Jake kept the spark of my dream alive. I've had my fair share of heartbreaks and setbacks, but nothing compares to the night that changed everything. It was just another evening when I decided to perform at a lesser-known bar in Nashville. My spirits were low after another rejection from a big studio. Emily, my rock, and Jake, my ever-loyal best friend, were there by my side, as always. "David, you've got this," Emily said, squeezing my hand as we walked into the dimly lit bar. Her eyes sparkled with that unwavering belief in me that I sometimes struggled to see in myself. "Yeah, man, just one more song, one more night," Jake added, clapping me on the back. He had his phone ready as usual to capture my performance. Little did I know how crucial that was going to be. I took a deep breath, picked up my old, worn-out guitar, and stepped onto the small wooden stage. The lights were harsh, blinding even, but the audience was kind and attentive, a mix of locals and a few curious tourists. I decided to play Lost in Nashville, a song I had written about my journey, my struggles, and my dreams. As I strummed the first chords, something shifted inside me. The words flowed effortlessly, each note resonating with the raw emotion that had been building up for so long. The bar fell silent, the clinking of glasses and murmurs of conversation fading into nothingness. All eyes were on me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly seen. Jake, true to his word, recorded the entire performance. He had a knack for capturing moments, and this one was no different. After I finished, the applause was thunderous, echoing off the walls. It was a small crowd, but their reaction was genuine, and it filled me with a sense of hope I hadn't felt in years. "Man, that was incredible," Jake exclaimed as I stepped off the stage. He was already fiddling with his phone. "I'm posting this right now. People need to see this." "Jake, I don't know," I started, but he waved me off. "Trust me, David, this will be good." Emily hugged me tightly. "You were amazing. I told you, you're meant for bigger things." We spent the rest of the evening at the bar, laughing, reminiscing, and for the first time in a while, genuinely enjoying each other's company. I had no idea what was happening on the internet at that very moment. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing non-stop. Notifications, messages, calls. My social media was blowing up. "David, you need to see this." Emily burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. She handed me her phone, and there it was. Jake's video of my performance had gone viral. Thousands of views, shares, comments. People from all over the country were praising my talent. "Is this real?" I asked, still groggy and disbelieving. "It is, dude." Jake walked in, grinning from ear to ear. "You did it!" The next few days were a whirlwind. I was invited to perform on local radio stations and TV shows, and even received calls from producers who had previously turned me down. It felt surreal, like I was living someone else's dream. One evening, as we were sitting in our small apartment, my phone rang again. It was Richard Collins, a renowned producer who had worked with some of the biggest names in the industry. "David, I've seen your video. It's phenomenal. I believe we need to meet and discuss your future." Richard's voice was smooth, confident. I put the phone on speaker, and Emily and Jake listened intently. "I don't know what to say," I replied, still in shock. "Say yes," Emily whispered, her eyes brimming with tears of joy. "Yes, Mr. Collins, I'd love that." As I hung up, I looked at Emily and Jake. "This is it, isn't it? This is the moment we've been waiting for." Jake nodded, a rare seriousness in his usually playful eyes. "Yeah, man, this is just the beginning." Emily hugged me tightly. "I knew you could do it. I always knew." That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and fear. My life was about to change in ways I couldn't even begin to imagine. But with Emily and Jake by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next. It was the start of something incredible, and I was ready to embrace every moment of it. When the video of my performance went viral, I couldn't believe my eyes. My phone was blowing up with notifications, and I was inundated with messages from people all over the country praising my talent. It felt surreal. Amidst this whirlwind of newfound fame, I was approached by Richard Collins, a well-known producer in the music industry. Richard expressed genuine interest in my music and offered me a contract with a major record label. "David, you have something special. We want to help you share your music with the world," Richard said, his tone confident and reassuring. "Really? This feels like a dream," I replied, my voice trembling with excitement. "It's real, David. Sign with us, and we'll make sure your music reaches millions." Without much hesitation, I signed the contract. It felt like the culmination of all my hard work and perseverance. Soon after, I was in the studio recording my first album. The process was intense, but incredibly fulfilling. Emily and Jake were there every step of the way, offering their unwavering support. One evening, after a long day in the studio, I sat down with Emily and Jake to talk about how things were going. "David, it's amazing to see you finally getting the recognition you deserve," Emily said, her eyes sparkling with pride. "Yeah, man. You've worked so hard for this. It's incredible to see everything falling into place," Jake added, clapping me on the shoulder. "Thanks, guys. I couldn't have done it without you both," I said, feeling a wave of gratitude. As the album released, it was met with overwhelming success. The songs climbed the charts, and I began touring across the country. Each performance was a new high, and the crowds were incredible. It seemed like everything was perfect. However, as time went on, I started noticing some unsettling details in my contract and the way Richard managed my career. One night, after a particularly exhausting concert, I sat down to review my contract more thoroughly. Emily noticed my furrowed brow and came over to see what was wrong. "David, what's bothering you?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "There's this clause in the contract. It doesn't seem right. It feels like I'm being controlled and exploited," I confessed, showing her the document. Emily frowned. "I always had a bad feeling about Richard. You need to be careful." The next day, I brought up my concerns with Jake. "Jake, I think something is off with my contract. I feel like Richard is taking advantage of me." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "We need to get a professional to look at this. Let's find a good lawyer." We hired a lawyer who specialized in entertainment contracts. After a thorough review, the lawyer confirmed my fears. The contract was indeed exploitative, and Richard had been manipulating my career for his own benefit. Feeling a mix of anger and determination, I decided to confront Richard. "Richard, we need to talk about this contract. It's unfair, and I feel like I'm being exploited," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Richard's demeanor shifted. "David, you're overreacting. This is how the industry works. If you don't like it, you can leave, but you'll lose everything." His threat hung in the air, but I knew I had to stand up for myself. I turned to Emily and Jake for support. "Emily, Jake, I need your help. I can't let Richard get away with this." Emily placed her hand on mine. "We'll get through this together. You deserve better." Jake added, "We'll find a way, David. We always do." With their support, I decided to take a stand. During an important show, I performed a new song that I wrote, exposing the exploitation I had faced. The audience was stunned, and the media frenzy that followed was intense. Despite the backlash, I felt a sense of liberation. The fight wasn't over, but I had taken the first step in reclaiming my career. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a bigger battle, one that would ultimately reveal the true extent of the deceit I had been subjected to. Asterisk, asterisk. David Marshall, a young aspiring musician from Nashville, has a dream to become a famous singer. Despite his undeniable talent, he faces numerous rejections and difficulties. His girlfriend, Emily Foster, and his best friend, Jake Thompson, support him unconditionally. One night, a video of his performance at a local bar goes viral, changing his life unexpectedly, and proving that he has the talent many doubted. But not everything is as it seems, and exciting twists await David on his journey. I still remember the day I found out about the clause in my contract. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I had been riding high on the wave of my newfound success, and to discover that I was essentially a puppet on Richard Collins' strings was devastating. I couldn't believe that someone I trusted to guide my career could have such a hidden agenda. "Richard, we need to talk," I said, entering his lavish office with walls adorned with gold records and awards. "What is it, David?" "I'm quite busy," he replied, barely looking up from his desk. "This contract, there's a clause here that basically means I have no control over my music or my career. You never mentioned this to me." Richard finally looked up, his eyes cold and calculating. "David, these are standard industry practices. You're making a mountain out of a molehill." I felt my blood boil. "Standard practice? This is exploitation. You're treating me like a pawn." Richard's expression shifted to one of thinly veiled menace. "Watch your tone, David. You signed the contract. You're bound by it. If you try to fight this, you'll find yourself out of the industry before you can say lawsuit." Feeling utterly betrayed, I left his office and headed straight to Emily's apartment. She was my rock, and I needed her now more than ever. "David, you look terrible. What happened?" Emily asked, her face full of concern as she opened the door. "It's Richard. The contract, it's a trap, Em. He's exploiting me, and I didn't even see it coming." Emily hugged me tightly. I had a bad feeling about Richard from the start. Why didn't we see this earlier? Jake joined us a few minutes later, having sensed the urgency in my voice when I called him. "David, this is serious. We need to get legal help right away. We found a lawyer, Mr. Thompson, who specialized in entertainment law. After reviewing the contract, his verdict was clear and harsh. This contract is designed to strip you of your rights and earnings, David. It's exploitation, plain and simple." I felt a mixture of relief and rage. At least now I knew I wasn't overreacting, but how could I have been so naive? The next big show was coming up, and I decided to take a stand. I couldn't let Richard control me any longer. I owed it to myself, to Emily, to Jake, and to every aspiring artist who might fall into the same trap. The night of the show, the atmosphere was electric. I could feel the energy of the crowd as I took the stage, but instead of following the set list, I started with a new song I had written, a song that exposed the dark side of the music industry and my own experience of betrayal. "David, what are you doing?" Richard's voice crackled through my earpiece, but I ignored him. As I sang, I saw the audience's reaction shift from confusion to support. By the end of the song, the crowd was roaring with applause. I had made my statement, and there was no going back. The media frenzy that followed was intense. Richard tried to retaliate by blacklisting me, but the public was on my side. People were outraged by the exploitation, and my story resonated with many. Backstage, Emily and Jake were waiting for me, their faces beaming with pride. "You did it, David. You stood up for yourself and for every other artist out there," Jake said, clapping me on the back. Emily kissed me softly. "I'm so proud of you. This is just the beginning." Despite the immediate backlash from the industry, the support I received from fans and fellow musicians was overwhelming. It became clear that the fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I had found my voice, not just as a singer, but as an advocate for fairness and integrity in the music industry. And with Emily and Jake by my side, I knew I could face whatever came next. When everything seemed lost, an unexpected twist changed the course of my life. One evening, as I sat in my small Nashville apartment, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders, Jake burst through the door, his eyes wide with excitement. "David, you won't believe what I found out," he exclaimed, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and exhilaration. I looked up, my curiosity piqued. "What is it, Jake? What's going on?" Jake took a deep breath, trying to contain his emotions. "I've been digging around trying to figure out why Richard turned out to be such a snake, and I found something big. It was Steve Harper all along. He manipulated Richard to exploit you." I was stunned. Steve Harper, the very producer who had dismissed me so callously in the beginning? It seemed impossible, but Jake's determination told me otherwise. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, my mind racing. Jake nodded vigorously. "Absolutely. I have emails, recorded calls, everything. Steve was jealous of your talent and wanted to get back at you for proving him wrong." The realization hit me like a freight train. All the struggles, the betrayals, it all started with Steve's envy. Fueled by this newfound knowledge, I contacted my lawyer and we began preparing our case. We knew it wouldn't be easy, but for once, I felt a glimmer of hope. Emily, as always, stood by my side. "David, you've got this. We'll expose them for who they truly are," she said, her eyes filled with determination. The courtroom battle was grueling. Steve and Richard's lawyers tried every trick in the book to discredit us, but the evidence Jake had gathered was irrefutable. We presented emails where Steve instructed Richard to exploit me, recordings of their conversations, and testimonies from former employees who had witnessed their schemes. As the trial progressed, the tide began to turn in our favor. The media picked up on the story, and the public outcry was overwhelming. Fans and fellow musicians rallied behind me, their support giving me strength. One afternoon, during a break in the proceedings, I sat in the courthouse hallway with Emily and Jake. "I can't believe how far we've come," I said, my voice filled with a mix of disbelief and gratitude. Emily squeezed my hand. "You've worked so hard for this, David. You deserve justice." Jake grinned. "And we're going to get it. Just wait." Finally, the day of the verdict arrived. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. The judge's gavel struck and the room fell silent. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, this court finds Steve Harper and Richard Collins guilty of fraud and exploitation, the judge declared. A wave of relief washed over me. We had won. Steve and Richard were held accountable for their actions, facing severe penalties for their betrayal. The weight that had burdened my heart for so long began to lift. With the legal battle behind us, I signed a new contract with a reputable record label. This time, there were no hidden clauses, no deceitful intentions. I recorded a new album, pouring my heart and soul into every track. The release was met with overwhelming success, and my songs climbed the charts. Emily, Jake, and I stood backstage at a massive stadium, the cheers of the crowd echoing through the walls. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of fulfillment I had never known before. As I stepped onto the stage, the sea of faces erupted in applause. The spotlight was blinding, but I felt a warmth in my chest, a sense of triumph that made every hardship worth it. "Thank you," I said into the microphone, my voice steady. "This victory isn't just mine, it's ours. To Emily, Jake, and everyone who believed in me when no one else did, this is for you." The crowd roared, and I began to sing, my voice carrying the weight of my journey, my dreams, and my gratitude. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had already achieved the greatest success of all. The unwavering support of those who loved me and the realization of my dream